Today's discussion is on language and meaning construction. Before that, let's look at what definitions are. Definitions are very useful in explaining and classifying meanings. A typical definition has two parts, namely definiendum and definient. The definiendum is the term which is being defined. Example, she banda. Definient explains the term which has been defined. That is, she banda is a master of a harbour or part in the East Indies. Kinds of definitions. We have the stipulative definitions, reportive or lexical definitions, and then the precising definitions. In getting the understanding of the above information, let's look at what a term is. But before that, is often used instead of the equality sign in giving definitions. Now, a term is referring to an expression in a language which is made up of one or more words. Example, United Nations, yellow. United Nations is referring to an organization, and yellow refers to a particular shade of color. Linguistic pitfall. They are inappropriate uses of language that hinder accurate and effective communication. This happens when we use languages that are under, distorted, and have empty meanings. Ambiguity falls under linguistic pitfall. An expression is ambiguous when it has more than one meaning or reference. We have different types of ambiguities. The first we are going to look at is lexical ambiguity. Lexical ambiguity occurs when a single word has more than one meaning in a language. The next is referential ambiguity. This is when the content does not make clear pronouns, quantifiers, and explains what the quantifiers are actually referring to. Example, Amisa and Michaela gave some cookies to Kobe and Evelyn because they like them. The question here is, who likes those cookies? Is it Michaela? Is it Amisa? Is it Kobe or Evelyn? To remove ambiguity, we can list all the different meanings or interpretations or review or sentence so that they are no longer ambiguous. And the process of doing this is known as disambiguation. Another type of ambiguity is the syntactic ambiguity. This occurs when there is more than one way to interpret the grammatical structure of an expression. For example, Belinda saw Daniela on the tree with a telescope. The question is, did Belinda see a telescope, or she saw Daniela carrying one on the tree? Vagueness. Vagueness is the state of being uncertain. It is also described as the imprecise or underuse of language. Example, Paul went to the bank. Bank as used in the sentence is ambiguous because bank could be a river bank or a financial institution. Uses and mentions. Use in this context means to make something serve one's purpose. Example, use a saw and other tools in construction. Another example, you cannot see without the use of your eye. Third example, to use eggs in cooking. Mention, to define or cite formally for a meritorious act or achievement, name, specify, or to even speak of. Example, they mentioned that a former CIA agent and someone who used to work for Hillary were in town. Example 2. Sandra mentioned that certain students from Central University are not serious. Logical consistency. A set of statements is used to be logically consistent when all of them can be true in the same situation. Contraries occurs when statements contradict each other, regardless of whether they are true. The word can, which is used in defining of logical consistency, cancelled. They can be true because it is not necessary that they are all true, but they showcase a logically possible situation. Example: I am a man. I have brown hair. You have blonde hair. Contraries come in this form. R and I is not the case of P. So looking at this example, I am a man. I have a brown hair. Therefore, you have a blonde hair. So in this case, R and I represents I am a man. I have brown hair. And in the case of P, it represents you have a blonde hair. So this is a logical inconsistency because me being a man and having a brown hair does not mean you have a blonde hair. Logical equivalence. A sentence is logically equivalent if they have the same logical content or values. Example: Lisa is in Denmark. Then she is in Europe. That is, D is equal to E. This explains the fact that because Lisa is in Denmark, she is in Europe. That is another country. Example 2. That particular boy in green shirt is a beast. Then he is ugly. The fact that the boy is in green shirt and he is a beast tells us that the boy is not looking nice, so therefore he is ugly. Logical consequence or entailment. This concept implies that if a statement is true, then it is true, if it is followed by one that is true. In this, we can say Q is logical consequence of P, that is, if P entail Q. In enticement, the conclusion is a consequence of the premise. Necessary truth. A necessary truth is a proposition that could not possibly have been false. This can be expressed by saying that a necessary truth is a proposition that is true in every possible world. Example: if Trigger is a bachelor, he is unnamed or unmarried. So this tells us that because Trigger is a bachelor, he is unmarried. Example 2, 17 is a prime. Note: a preposition is a word governing and usually preceding a noun or a pronoun and expressing a relation to another word or element in a clause. Necessary falsehood. A necessary falsehood is a preposition which is false in all possible words. Example: there is no married bachelor. This tells us if someone is a bachelor, then automatically he is not married, or there is no way he is married. Contingent truth. A contingent truth is a true preposition that have been false. A contingent falsehood is a false proposition that could have been true. This is sometimes expressed by saying that a contingent proposition is one that is true in some possible world and not in others. Example: squares have 4 sides. In conclusion, definition and language is very useful because it helps you to have the common understanding, especially when reading. By this, it expresses the essential nature of thinking critically. This brings us to the end of our discussion. Thank you very much for paying a critical attention to what we've just explained. We are